would like to welcome to the stage our co-chair and CEO of the NUS, Dr. Lily Chan. Please put your hands together as she chairs a panel on the Start Up Conglomerate. Thank you very much, Lily.
Good morning. We're going to have an awesome panel this morning, and I guess, can I invite all of you to come up? It's a bit too early. I'm trying to count the number of chairs. So I'm right, 5 of us. Right. Please, okay. Please. This morning's session, we call it the Startup Conglomerate. The content of this session will be talking about why do Asian conglomerates want to work with startups? I'd like to see a show of hands. How many are startups inside this audience? Okay, please also tell your other friends outside to come on in, because at the end of this session, they're going to pitch to you why you should work with them. So please tell your other friends to come in before the end of this session. So first of all, let me introduce Edgar Hardless from Singtel Innovate, Srihathai Prammanee, we call her On. She is from AIS, and she heads the startup at AIS, and that's in Bangkok, in Thailand. Rajiv, Menon, Managing Director, Cisco Investments and M&A, in charge of investments and M&A. Don. Don, who is from BNP Paribas. We have an amazing panel here, very, very international. Born in Thailand, born in Malaysia, born in France, born in India, lived in various parts of the world, including Finland, UK, everywhere in Asia. So it's a very international panel with a lot of experiences from where they come from. So one of the first questions, and one of the first things I think is a good way to start, is to get each and every one of them to do a very short introduction of themselves, the organization they represent, and what they do in that organization. Can I start with On?
Oh, yes. Hi, everyone, and good morning, everyone, and thanks for coming today, even like early after the party last night. My name is On, so I'm heading AIS, the startup, which is the more like a business section under AIS, under strategic department of AIS. So myself, I report directly to my CEO. The collaboration that we work with startup is more like strategic partnership. So when startup pitching to us, they are pitching for commercial, not just the investment. How to drive the commercial into market, either like mass market or business market in Thailand. So we mainly focus the startup that want to expand market in Thailand. We have about 38 portfolios, but in the mix between early stage until the later stage Thai companies in our portfolio. Being said that, however, we still welcome for like international startup to work with AIS, and if you like to expand your market in Thailand, AIS is the one.
In case you don't know, AIS is a telco service company in Thailand.
Yes, we are the biggest telco in Thailand.
Okay,
and
the
also,
biggest telco service company in Thailand.
We own over half of the population's customer base as well.
Edgar?
Hi, so I'm Edgar Hardless. I run Singtel Innovate, which is the corporate venture arm of the Singtel Group. Singtel Group represents essentially 6 telcos and just over 650 million mobile subscribers across the region. And in Singtel Innovate, we have 2 very important roles. The first is we're the tech scout. Our job is with the teams based in Silicon Valley, Israel, here in Singapore and in China, is to keep on top of the emerging technologies and trends that we are seeing that are having an impact both in our businesses and just generally across the globe, and to make sure our business units are better informed and educated in terms of the potential implications and opportunities that these new technologies can bring. And the second is obviously we do invest in startups from seed all the way to late stage in areas where we believe that there's a strategic fit and relevance with the startup's technology and solution.
Thank you. Don?
Yeah, hi, so I'm Doan from BNP Paribas. So BNP Paribas, it's a global French bank present in 74 countries in the world, employing around 190,000 employees. In Asia, we are present in 14 markets, mainly in corporate investment banking, asset management, wealth management, and insurance. And within the investment bank, I'm running global markets and treasury technology for the region. And for the past 2 years, I've been working with the ecosystem in Asia to try to foster digital innovation within the investment bank.
Thank you. Rajiv?
Thank you. Hey everyone, Rajiv. So before I give the something wrong. Before I give the intro, I want to tell you this, that all the speakers, all of us, the small assigned student ambassadors to accompany. Student ambassadors to come.
Wait. I think someone's coming to fix it for you.
Maybe I'll just take this. Yeah, hi, Rajiv. I was just saying that all the speakers have been assigned student ambassadors from NUS Enterprise. And when I met my ambassador this morning, one of the first things he said is, "Oh, you look much younger than your photograph." And I wasn't sure if I should be pleased with that or upset with that, but clearly I need to change the photograph.
They're only 19 years old, okay?
No, I didn't give him a hard time. I thanked him. So I run the investments and M&A group for Cisco here in the region. We're probably very well known for all the acquisitions that Cisco does because we are one of the most active acquirers in corporate history. We've bought more than 200 companies. So it's a well-earned reputation, but that tends to overshadow often how active we are as tech investors. We are one of the largest tech investors. We deploy, on average, about $200 million a year globally. Between January 2017 and now, we've invested in about 68 startups, and in aggregate deployed about $400 million of capital. So we are very, very large investors, and again, I'll be happy to talk about that later. We're a very lean, mean team, only 40 people globally, and including China, 8 people in this region, and very actively looking to invest in companies in the region. We invest across stages, but I'd say our sweet spot is a solid A or stage B company.
Right. So traditionally, I think maybe up until 10 years ago or less, investments usually come from the standard VCs. And corporations in the last decade have started to get very, very active in investments and looking at startups. And the assumption is that, you're either deploying excess cash that you have, or you are looking for something in your organization. So in a sense, it's innovating the corporation. So what is it for you in your organization? Why are you doing this? And what do you hope to achieve out of looking at all these startups? Can I start with Edgar?
Sure. So look, from a telco industry, and as everyone knows, I think over the last 10, 15 years, there's been tremendous change in the world we live in terms of connectivity, the mobile device, the launch of the iPhone back, I think it's only 11 years ago, 2007, I believe, is when the iPhone was first launched. There's been a tremendous amount of change in the industry that we do. Although we provide connectivity, we provide the services on top. And I think, there's a realization that a lot of the new technology, the new business models, new ideas are actually coming from the startup ecosystem. They're coming from these new tech companies that are growing up. We heard from one yesterday in terms of Anthony Tan at Grab. And therefore, it is incredibly important for us as a telco group to make sure, we're engaging with these companies, both to understand what they do and see how we can potentially work with them to create win-win partnerships. So the concept of open innovation for us is something that we realized a fair amount of time ago at Singtel. We created and launched Innovate in 2010 to be able to help us more effectively engage with the startup ecosystems around the world and to identify technologies and companies that could lead to either better customer service, more efficient management and resilience of our networks, and also ultimately new business lines. And a lot of that is what we are seeing coming out from the startup ecosystems as opposed to the more traditional large industry players we've had in the past.
And Rajiv, what's Cisco looking for?
Yeah, so one thing I'll say, Lily, is that in my personal opinion, might be self-serving, but personal opinion, I think Cisco's had a fairly mature approach towards, thought process towards innovation. So we've been investing for nearly 25 years now. We're very mature investors, and our view of innovation has been that as a Silicon Valley-based technology firm, obviously we do a lot of R&D, so we build a lot of cool stuff, but we've never thought that we are the only people innovating in our relevant space. So we've always had a build, buy that we do actively, invest, co-develop, and partner. So that's how we think about innovation, those 5 pillars. Obviously, my team and I, we work across 2 of those, which is the buy and the invest. But we also do co-development. Edgar and I know each other well. We've talked about co-innovation with Singtel as partners, but we also co-innovate with startups, academia, etc. So we're looking for things that are relevant to our core domains, and there are many, right? So we play across data center, IoT, cybersecurity, etc. Cybersecurity has been a subject of conversation for us with Edgar, but also in areas that may be just extensions. It may not be something the company is doing today, but what we believe could become very large markets. So just as a simple example, IoT can mean many things to many people. Our business unit and the company's laid down a strategy for IoT, so for example, we don't sell drones, and nor do we make parts for drones, but we are invested in a drones company because we think very large use cases could emerge out of that, and that's useful for us to invest in, learn about, and see kind of where it goes. So we invest in the current, but we also definitely invest in the next horizon thing that could emerge as relevant for technology.
Thank you. On? Because you mentioned to me earlier, you have 38 partners or startups or companies that you oversee and work with.
Yeah, so when we work with them, we look onto our customer perspective as well, that we cannot have only one single service and serve the whole customer segment. So that's why we love to work with startup, because we believe that startup will bridge the gap in each segment for us. And then it's similar to him that when we work with them, we work with, like, for today's startup that launch into the commercial, for today commercial, and also something in the future as well. So innovation for me is not just the startup to innovate, but also people inside AAS as well. We have to open the technology for them to access. So in AAS, we open the API for startups to access, to bridge the gap between outside innovation and inside innovations, and bring something together and launching into market.
Are they all Thai startups?
Currently, they are Thai startup. We just have the open API launch just a year. So the first year that we do a trial for the Thai startup for for the first start.
Right. And Don, the question will be phrased slightly differently. So when you see all these new technologies, what are your thoughts in integrating it into what you do and oversee at BNP Paribas?
In fact, we see startups as opportunity to collaborate, in the sense that what they do is that they do better one part of our value chain. As a bank, we need to process transactions for our clients, so we need to ensure that end-to-end we deliver consistent and quality services, but we are not necessarily the best in one part of that workflow. And what startups do is that they specialize in particular area, and they deliver better services or more higher quality services on some area. So for us, the challenge is how to be able to leverage on those tools and new utilities in order to integrate them and ensure that we don't act as a monolithic block which is not able to integrate such solutions.
So do you have an idea or an example of a technology or startup that's been acquired into the company that is now being used in?
So for the past 10 years, we've been investing here and there in various technologies. So if you look at it recently, we've acquired stakes in a company called Symphony, which is a kind of messaging framework which has been created to kind of challenge Bloomberg messaging. And what we are doing is we've been deploying it to all our internal users for them to better communicate among themselves, but also for other users of Symphony externally, so other banks, etc., to communicate in a better way with them, in a better, secure way, in a compliant way.
Right.
So that's one of the examples that we've been having.
Rajiv, is not too confidential. Do you have an example of a startup or a technology that's been acquired into Cisco besides just the investment part that is being used in Cisco today? Can you think of an example?
There's actually a few. So I'll make two comments. One, I'll come back to the answer to that one. But one, we don't invest in companies with the idea of acquiring.
Right.
Because that can create conflicts for us. Although we have done that in rare instances, and we have acquired out of our own portfolio. So we do that. We've acquired companies in our data center portfolio as an example that's fully integrated into our data center products and that we're going to market with. In fact, there are examples of companies that we really like, didn't invest in for one reason or the other, whether it's for their decision or ours, and in the process of working with us, because we both liked each other so much, they created a massive pipeline. And I won't take the name of that company, although I think I do have the CEO's permission to take the name, but I won't. But it's started in Japan. It's in the storage area, cloud storage. And in his words, created a very well-curated, verified $100 million pipeline working with Cisco just in the process of getting to know us. So that's an example I like to quote, but yeah.
Thank you. Edgar, from the Singtel or the Singtel Innovate perspective, are there technologies from startups or companies you've acquired that's really made a difference now in the organization?
From a Singtel perspective, absolutely. So in fact, in the last 6 to 7 years, I guess, one of the first local investments, which was, or startups acquired, was Hungry Go Where, about 6 to 7 years ago by Singtel. So that was obviously a recognition that in terms of, from a internet perspective, webs, in terms of food reviews and so forth, become increasingly important for people's lives. So that was an acquisition. I think the two other major ones that Singtel has acquired in that time frame is Amobi, which is a US ad tech company. Singtel has since then grown Amobi into a substantial advertising business. And the more recent one is Singtel has forayed into cybersecurity with the acquisition of TrustWave, which was another large cybersecurity company in the US. So those are examples of, I guess, of acquisitions. But obviously, it's not just about acquisitions. I like to say that we, as part of our job, is also to make sure we are connecting startups with interesting technologies with our business units. So and if we can achieve a commercial arrangement, a commercial agreement, so that our business units adopt to the technology to be able to use to serve customers better, provide better networks and so forth, that's also what we consider a win. But specifically the acquisitions, those are some of the acquisitions that Singtel has made in the startup ecosystem.
On? Right. For AIS, so have you looked at, are there companies or startups that you have acquired or have invested in that you have brought into the company that has made a difference to
yes.
the company?
Back into I think 7 years ago, that's the first case for us that we bought Ukbe, which is one of the biggest e-commerce e-book platform in Thailand. So that's made a big move, not just for AIS, but for the whole country, to change the people digital life from reading a physical newspaper into the digital one. Right? So that is one example, and that's been a kind of very success case for us. So after that, Inventory is one of our alliance in the investment arm, also invested as well. And so AIS itself, we cannot do that in-house, but we want to launch it with one of the devices in a very short time and make it nationwide and make it an impact. So once we work with Ukbe, rather than just implement it for a year, it just took us only like 2 months or 3 months to launch that into market. And since then, the country has recognized that now the telecom has changed, not just our connectivity, but it's becoming a digital service for the digital lifestyle.
Right. So one of the things, I mean, in Asia, or at least in Singapore context, because we've worked with so many startups emanating from the National University of Singapore, our startups have aspirations. One is be acquired, and I get a few $1 million in my pocket, which is also fine. One is, I keep raising money and hopefully I can IPO, which is also fine. And another one is, okay, at some point I'm going to be independent. I will pay back my investors, whatever the equity structure is. For a startup or a company that gets acquired, I see many of our young people, they have their own way of doing things. And then now suddenly they're being acquired for good reasons, There is a big cultural divide between, say, 30 of these young people, and I'm not saying the corporates are all old people or mature people, but there is a cultural divide in terms of how you do things. If you have a word of advice, and I'm sure now I see a lot more startups coming in, what would you give them in terms of an advice? If for the better of both companies, this happens and it's a good thing, what would be the first advice you give to the group of founders and the management of that company? Assume there are about 30 people.
Right.
Can you start?
Rather than that go straight giving them advice, it's just my personal tactics that I make everyone have the same problem. So the corporate business unit problem is also my problem. My problem is also her problem. In the same time, startup problem is also the business unit problem as well. So rather than just looking startup as the separate company, we set the aim goal together and then drive the aim goal together, meaning that KPI is shared between startup, myself, and also the business unit. So once everyone have the same problem, they know what they have to do to drive in the same thing. Yeah.
So it's this common objective that both of you come in, and therefore everyone, no matter what the cultural divide is,
Yes.
you have to achieve that common objective.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
So the most important thing is to share and transparent communicate that
Right.
common objective to
Right.
everyone.
Right. Edgar, how would you?
I guess maybe two things. I'll share with Vaughan is that basically probably one of the most important things is alignment of vision, right? So the corporate that's acquiring you, you believe that you and the corporate feel aligned in terms of what is the opportunity and how you're going to tackle that opportunity. Because I think it's very important to make, because then, inevitably issues are going to crop up along the way, things are going to happen. But I think as long as both parties are aligned in terms of what they're trying to achieve, then you should figure something out and move forward. So I think that is one very important thing. I think the other thing is, from a startup perspective, I think you have to accept that you're being acquired, if it is by a large corporate and you're a small company, you have to expect life will change, right? You're now part of a large corporate. Corporates, as they grow up, they have more process. So you're not going to have necessarily the same ultimate freedom you have to make all the decisions you have when you're an independent company working yourself. But then at the same time, you're hopefully blessed with more resources the backing of a large corporate, of a big brand, and the channels to market and everything else. So those are what you need to, excuse me, to leverage on. But life will change, and I think you have to be prepared as an entrepreneur to accept that how you've taken your company to the point where it gets acquired, it's going to change once you get acquired. I think you have to be willing to accept that some of those changes are going to impact on the way you're potentially going to run your business.
Rajiv?
Yeah, a couple of things actually. I could say a lot about this topic, but
Yes.
having, us having acquired more than 200 companies. Few things. Firstly, I agree with Edgar, alignment, vision, etc. But if you go beyond that, I think you have to, the advice is recognize the reality. The reality being that even if you were merging with another 30 people company, not a Singtel or a Cisco, you're going to have some challenges. That's just the truth of a merger or an acquisition. They may be different when you're being acquired by a larger company versus, so that's one. I'd say in our case, we've experienced all kinds of things, and we are constantly disrupting ourselves in how we do these things. So our model for the longest time was acquiring the company, whether it was a 5,000 people company or a 5-person people company, quickly integrating and then moving on. In recent years, we have experimented with a couple of other models. So for example, we made it very successful, one of our most successful acquisitions in recent history, Meraki, which we sort of kept separate for a while. And that was born out of learning from a couple of previous acquisitions, which we felt had very different business models, not just perhaps cultures, but very different business models to Cisco's own business model. And we felt that we could have done better if we did a slow burn integration versus a quick integration. I'll say a couple of other things. For us, and this is important for the entrepreneurs to assess, what is the view of the acquirer of the talent that comes with the acquisition? Because you can have an acquirer with views across the entire spectrum. For Cisco, the talent is probably the most important part of the acquisition. And the proof point is that in a company that has 75,000 employees, 20% of our employees came by acquisitions, so about 15,000. And some of the most senior, so they're not just at sort of the field level, some of the most senior executives in the company have actually come out of acquisitions even today and historically. And so we certainly believe in a win-win, and the talent being and that's important for the entrepreneur to assess as to what does the acquirer feel about that.
Right. From a French company perspective, if in the future you do acquire a ASEAN startup, what would your advice be to them to integrate into a French corporation?
For a French corporation, the reason why we would be interested in that is for us to be able to adapt to specificities of the Asia market.
To adapt the Asian market.
For ourselves to adapt and to help our development in the region. So typically, if I take the example of us trying to get better in the way of providing, voice-to-text translation, for example. Today, naturally, we will have solutions which are more adapted to the Western market to be able to translate from English, French, etc., in order for us to then process transactions in a more automated way. One of the areas where Asia could be beneficial is about all the languages that we have in Asia, Chinese, Korean, Japanese, for which today we don't necessarily have a mature solution in order to do that, or global companies don't yet offer this kind of solutions. So that could be opportunities for Asian companies to collaborate with us. Now, whether it's full acquisition, probably not, because we are banks and we're not necessarily a technology company, but definitely collaboration with such company in order to provide a comprehensive solution for our clients.
So we have remaining about 5 minutes or so. Can I have a show of hands? Are there startups in here? Come on, I'm sure there are. Can't be just 2 or 3 of you. Many of you work for startups in here, right? Okay, I'm going to turn this around the other way. You startups have been pitching to all of them all the time. They tell you 1 minute, 5 minutes, 3 minutes, right? So I'm going to make it very hard. I'm going to make them pitch to you why you should be working with them and why, why you should come to them. It's, I told Singtel, you cannot say, I have money. I told Cisco, you cannot say, I have money, therefore you come. So can I put the 3 of you who do investments and acquisitions and all that to do a pitch?
All right.
Rajiv.
Yeah, this time I'll go first. So Cisco has about 20,000 salespeople around the world, but as I was saying, we've got a very active partner strategy. So about 96% of Cisco's $50 billion revenue goes via partners. So beyond the 20,000 people, there's 280,000 people around the world who wake up every day and do nothing but sell Cisco. They don't have a roster of vendors they sell. They do nothing but sell Cisco. So if you want to leverage the power of that scale, come and find me.
Okay. Edgar? Or Edgar first?
Okay, so
Oh, you want Don to go first? Right.
I mean, basically in Asia, we are, as I said, we are present in 14 countries. We have activities from retail, wealth management, all the way to investment bank and asset management. We have 15,000 employees in the region, 2,000 in Singapore. So definitely Asia is a growing market for us. We are targeting to have roughly almost a third of our revenue worldwide to be generated in Asia in the coming years. And so therefore there are opportunities for us to develop services, improve customer journey, and therefore develop solutions around user experience all the way to data analytics, machine learning, etc. within the region. And now the model is kind of changing. In the past, you would deploy a global solution to all the regions, but definitely with the startup environment, it's not, you don't have one player in the market who is the best of the class. You need to be able to find partners in various regions to adapt to specificities that you have in the region. Asia being a very complex region, especially regulatory-wise, definitely there are opportunities to find tailor-made solutions for us.
Okay, thank you. You went over the limit though. It's okay. On, can you do your pitch to the startups in here why they should work with you?
Okay. In addition to the money, you can access to the biggest customer base across Thailand. So with all the expert and all the hand from AIS itself that to help you not just only for the commercialization but also communications, PR, and everything. Not just coming in Thailand, coming to AIS meaning that getting the access into Edgar as well, and also all the Singtel group across the region too.
That's a good one. So Singapore companies can pitch to you, get into Thailand,
Yes.
at the same time get an indirect access to Singtel. Okay.
So obviously every time I ask startups or startups kind of pitch me, one of the key questions I always ask is, what's your unique selling point? What's your differentiator? So in this case, I think Innovate's differentiator is that with one meeting, we can help connect you to 6 of the largest telcos across Southeast Asia. And actually beyond that, we have connections into many other telcos around the world. And the great thing about the telco industry is we're all facing similar problems. So therefore, if there's a solution that works with 1 or 2 of our members of the Singtel group, there's a good chance that your same solution will be very relevant to other telcos around the world. So we can help you validate your value proposition in terms of the market, and that can then be used as a good reference point for you to approach other potential telco customers. But I would say that's our differentiator.
Thank you. Thank you. We're in time. Thank you very much to this panel. I've enjoyed meeting all of you and moderating this panel. I hope the rest of you have also enjoyed this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you.